Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. Trigger warning, I'll be discussing evolution and broadly hinting at sexual selection. So, if either of those bothers you, this might not be the show for you. I've been keeping up with, evolution and science and how they're discovering more and more populations are linked to each other. And I'm astonished that archaeologists and anthropologists are so surprised how much we have in common with Denisovians, Neanderthals, etc., etc. Like, humans have dispersed all over the earth. We all came from Africa, but we came out of Africa multiple times. There's records of multiple exodus from Africa. Some decided to go north, some decided to go east. They went wherever the heck they could. Indeed, some actually managed to make it across the entrance to the Mediterranean Sea, or at least there's evidence for that at least a million years ago. And we all evolved from pretty much from Homo erectus. There's multiple examples of Homo, which is humans, and they're all over the place. The so-called hobbits, I can't remember the exact terminology for it, were mostly isolated, but they did a pretty good living up until around 30,000 years ago, which is a magic point in history. But we'll get to that. First of all, I don't understand why scientists are so incredulous at the fact that we share a lot of DNA with Neanderthals, Denisovians, and whatever else may be out there that we have yet to discover. We're only showing between 1 and 5% in most people, but remember, these are from the genus Homo. Man, we recognize them as humans. If they were to go around today and we put them in a decent coat, a top hat, most people wouldn't distinguish between them and us. We should probably shower them too, because just because we know humans have their own odor. This race of ours shares 98% to 99% of its genetic code with chimpanzees and bonobos. So think about something. We know a chimpanzee and a bonobo is not the same as us. They're similar. But why does it surprise scientists when you would have had communities living close by with Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, or not, well, maybe Homo erectus, maybe not, Homo neanderthalis, and the Denisovians, and there wouldn't be interbreeding? There's one thing we know humans will do. They're willing to swap genetic information with almost anything, anywhere, anytime. Indeed, there's an entire industry devoted to it, several industries to servicing that niche. I hate to bring this up, but humans, when they're desperate, yeah, species selection is not as exclusive as scientists think. Don't Google this, just trust me, there's websites devoted to anything you can think of. And I haven't Googled very far down that trail. I only went in there by accident. I know that's what everybody says. But I thought zoophilia meant people who love going to zoos. I was wrong. I will admit that. This was early in the internet, and like late 90s, early 2000s, and yeah, I got a stinging rebuke on my part. But it informs what I'm saying today. Tribes in the South America rainforest that haven't even been contacted by scientists will trade humans, wives and husbands and stuff like that, to ensure that peace happens. This this has been going on for since humans have been around. Quite likely, if you were living close to a Neanderthal or Denisovian community, trade would have been a priority because it's one thing that makes humans humans. And because of that, you'd have to share a common language. Now, if you are next to a Denisovian or a Neanderthal and one of them seems to be interested in you, hey, it's the Stone Age. Even before, well, at the beginnings of the Stone Age in some eras, there probably isn't that taboo that existed between, say, the 1800s and the 1960s. You would have had no concept of speciation. All you would have known is that hot little Denisovian chick was, smiling at you all day. And maybe it's time to shoot your shot, especially if you have some sort of common language. It's no different than, a white person marrying an Asian, a black person marrying an Indian. They're a little bit further divergent on the genetic speciation, but as I pointed out either, speciation doesn't impact human sexual selection. And remember that 1 to 5% is only the genes that are unique to Denisovians and Neanderthals. That is an insignificant amount of data, but we share so much with them already. Again, we're both Homo. We're both hominids. So that little bit of genetic information, despite the fact it's seeming small, 1 to 5%, is because there's so much overlap. We have to really, really shave it fine before we find something different. Now, the curious part is, well, we know it wouldn't all have been sunshine and roses. Some tribes choose to aggressively take over an area, something that hasn't stopped even to today, and I'm sure in ancient society it would have been the same. There's the unfortunate truth to most of history is make love and war. But curiously, approximately 30,000 years ago, a lot of these species start going extinct. Now, as I said, we carry a bit of them with us. Our ancestors carried their genetic information towards today where we can, take care of it. You can make an argument that humans decided they were no longer going to put up with the Neanderthals and Denisovians and wiped them out. But the technology available, it would be very hard to picture a war like anything we have today. Humans are uniquely adapted for throwing. Well, let me say Homo sapiens are adapted for throwing. Look at an NFL quarterback. Look at somebody throwing a spear. Notice that the motion is almost identical because you're getting the most out of it. Now, supposedly, Neanderthals were more pointing people with a sharp stick, but if we showed them the basics of throwing, I'm sure they would have come up with it. We don't know enough about the Denisovians, but they're similar enough. No doubt they had access to the same type of technology. There were massive changes in the world from 30,000 years ago to 10,000 years ago because it was the end of the last ice age, from it going from mild to the worst it had been to mild again. And that puts a lot of pressure on anybody. We have the Inuit who survive constantly because they've been able to implement strategies. For example, they don't just eat seal, they eat anything they can find. The seaweed grass, they bring that out because that's their vitamin C, that's their nutrients, that's their vitamins. And seal meat itself is high in fats and all sorts of stuff like that. The Neanderthal probably would have been more of a successful hunter when it comes to seals because they have that raw strength to hook the thing and drag it out of the ice. We know Neanderthals had some sort of clothing technology, and it was successful because when they moved into Europe, they were able to adapt it to the colder regions of Europe and survive there. I don't think anybody's going to argue that the Vikings were more technologically advanced than the Greenland Inuit. But the Greenland Inuit are still around, and the Vikings disappeared until the Norwegians came along. Even within ourselves, the more advanced society, the more advanced technology does not always win the day. And like I said, it's obvious to anybody at this point that there was some hanky-panky going on between the various species of hominids. And I'm going to limit it there because I don't want to talk about the other stuff again. But why is it every single time that they come across this information, like, we're astounded how much this happened. They just did a lot of genetic sequencing in Japan, and they got about 4% Neanderthal and 1% Denisovian. Why is this a surprise? It would be a surprise if there was none. In sub-Saharan African, they didn't have a lot of contact with these species that had branched off and speciated on their own. But Europeans and Asians and stuff like that, they had tons of experience with that. Japan, kind of makes sense to me because, to keep flowing eastward, you have to make it across the tundra, the steppes, but we see humans doing that today with primitive technology. I hate calling it primitive. I really do because it's a different technology base than we would use, but it's still very effective. But what do you think? Am I wrong in saying it's surprising that we don't have more evidence? Or do you think the evidence is somehow explainable through something else other than humans like to be around other humans? And I'm expanding humans to our immediate cousins and ancestors. And what do you think happened 30,000 years ago? Why did they die out while we stayed the same? With that, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Don't forget sharing is caring. And please hit the notification icon so you can be notified every time we publish a new episode. Thank you and have a great day.